Welcome to UNCAGED. Today we're speaking with Yonesy Núñez. How are you?
Hey Ben, I'm doing great. As we just mentioned, sure hope it's Thursday. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. So, Yonesy and I were talking a little bit before the show. He works in one of the most interesting areas of business today. I would say it's probably an area that, 10, 20 years ago, people weren't thinking about enough. Now, I don't think there's a major business decision made without thinking about the cybersecurity issues, the risk profile, that the company faces. And Yonesy's had an amazing career in that space. And so today we're going to be talking a lot about global cybersecurity and all of the issues around it. Yonesy sits on a variety of boards. He is today in New York City launching part of the launch team of a very exciting technology. I will talk to him a little bit about that, but more broadly speaking, we're going to be talking about the lovely world of cyber and what's happening there. Yonesy, great to have you on the show. Before we get into really the heart of the matter today, tell us a little bit about your background and your career.
Well, thank you so much, Ben. Pleasure to be here in your podcast. Also, congratulations on your fifth year
Thank you
doing
so
this
much.
for your viewers and your followers. So I'd like to start at the beginning, Ben. I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic in a small town called Asua. I came to the Bronx when I was about 12, and I've been here ever since. And one of the things I learned early on was that curiosity is extremely important, and the thirst for knowledge has always been there. And what a great place here in New York City it is to satiate yourself with knowledge. And it's just, I call it the nexus of the world here in New York City. And I work basically my entire life trying to get more knowledge, solve problems, and do it with amazing humans. So I've been blessed, lucky, and I've been at the right places to be able to provide impact. As you mentioned, I love cybersecurity. I stumbled upon this, some 27, 28 years ago, and I've just been enamored with the capabilities that we can not only implement, but develop to help others and help protect the future. I find that cybersecurity is what allows us to be innovative, allows us to challenge ourselves, and allows the world to evolve. And you mentioned where we are right now. I find that we are at the most transformational point of our lifetimes, probably of humankind. I mentioned on an interview last year that the two most popular letters in the alphabet were A and I. It looks like starting 2020 still there. So those two letters are continuing to be extremely popular
Yeah, well, I
in
mean, you
English language.
have it on your t-shirt today, surf.ai. Tell us a little bit about some of the projects. Maybe start with surf.ai that you're working on.
Yeah, so we're launching Surf AI, and we're an organization that specializes in applied AI for cybersecurity. So think of us as that organization that's gonna help reduce risk and elevate your teams. One of the theses that I have at this juncture of humankind is that we have to bring humanity back into our day-to-day lives, and if we can leverage AI to do so by helping understand context and allowing people to do what we do best, which is to disambiguate, to be creative, and to add that human empathy, I think we're going to be successful. So with Surf AI, we're going to be focusing on applying our context graph to ensure folks can deliver and remediate and close the gap. As you mentioned, cybersecurity is all about reducing the attack surface. As you probably could imagine, the problems don't just go away. People have to go interact with tools, with humans, with processes, with supply chains. And having that context, every organization is different. So understanding that context is really what we are all about, and applying intelligent workflows that have context. I like to say garbage in, garbage out. And if you have the right context, then you have true intelligence.
Well, I mean, let's dig into that lovely acronym that you mentioned, AI. I mean, that really is kind of the topic of the moment. Certainly, I imagine that it's exciting to hear how Surf AI uses it to support the cybersecurity efforts. I imagine a lot of people worry about the risks as well, right, that are caused by AI. But I mean, is that really when you talk to these boards that you're on, when you talk to your customers, is that really the topic of the moment for you?
I believe not just in the conversations that I have, but across the board, just talking to my peers, speaking with other senior leaders, specifically in cybersecurity space and technology. What we're finding is that no one wants to be the organization, the person that waits until the end. So one of the questions that I like to ask, what's the probability that in 3 to 5 years from now, everything that you do is going to leverage some type of AI in some way, shape, or form? The answer is 110%. So if that's the case, you want to lean into this moment and make sure that you are educating not only yourself, but the organizations that you work for, the communities around you, the schools, making sure that we're educating the populace on how to leverage AI effectively in a safe fashion and in a controlled fashion. But we have to lean into this moment. I always like to say that when the spear was invented, the spear didn't take over the world. The humans that could use the spear took over the world. And in the sense, what I mean by that is that we have to be knowledgeable AI. We're not going to be replaced by AI. AI is going to be yet another tool in the toolkit for us to continue to evolve, advance our civilization and humankind. And I feel very strongly that we have, as I mentioned, an opportunity to get back to being humans, to get back to leading with empathy, to get back to our roots as collaborative beings that we are. And I find that I want to lean into this moment to not only help advance our civilization, but also bring the humanity back.
And I saw, Jonas, you've been a CISO for over 5 times now. I mean, I would say that that role continues to shift. For me, I feel like it's sitting more and more at the center and the top of organizations. But tell me a little bit about what you see out there. How has that role evolved?
It's a really good question. So I've been a CISO since 2004, and I would say that at a high level, the role changes. Different organizations require CISOs, chief information security officers, chief security officers to be different things, right? So you can be the developer CISO, you can be the remediation CISO, you can be the wartime CISO. You're responding to a breach. So there are definitely different types of CISOs in different parts of organizations, like a human they're all unique, right? And so being unique, it requires a type of CISO that's going to help that organization move forward. So being that it's one of the youngest, if not the youngest C-level executive position in organizations this day, we're still at a very nascent stage. So the role continues to evolve. And with the advancements in technology, of course, it's evolving extremely fast. Because at the end of the day, one of my friends likes to call it, we're the chief innovation security officer because now security is being brought in at the forefront because you want to make sure you're deploying technology, you're deploying your business process, your third party, your supply chain, all in a secure fashion. So
Yeah.
guess who gets to be involved in those conversations. I like to say personally that the chief information security officer, chief security officer role today is what operational risk management was 15 years ago, where
Yeah.
it's something that cuts across all of the components of the organization. It's not just technology, that's
Yeah.
just one of the branches.
I think you're spot on. I mean, it's as kind of building kind of new platforms or technologies in some ways becomes easier with the application of machine learning, etc. That critical reasoning, that strategy of how you're going to structure it so that it is supported, that it is safe and secure, that you can still maintain the level of flexibility that an organization needs, but also continue to actually have it be safe is absolutely critical. And I mean, I've just seen the work over the last 5 years where we've talked to a lot of CISOs. And I mean, during the pandemic, it was like everything fell on the CISO to figure out how do you shift a workforce to work at home all of a sudden, right? Suddenly you had all these kind of like banks and companies that had very rigorous compliance structures and systems, and suddenly you had essentially a diverse workforce, working from anywhere really. And so now you had to try to figure out how to kind of manage that. And then now with AI, you have this kind of world where every day there seems to be kind of an infinite number of possibilities and variables that we're facing. And I think one of the lines that I heard at the Consumer Electronics Show this year was, this is the year where you have to start at distrust. Like, start with distrust, i.e., when you get a piece of content or anything, you have to first be like, is this real? Is this not, is this not somehow malicious? And I must admit, I feel like the sophistication of these types of tools gets more and more complex every day. But I mean, what an interesting space to spend your career in. And I mean, I can only imagine that must be very interesting from a kind of a problem solving perspective. But tell me a little bit about kind of what drives your passion for this space.
Yeah, as I mentioned, growing up in a space where knowledge was not freely available and coming into the US, I was always very thirsty for knowledge, very thirsty for solving problems, complex problems, doing it with the right people, with the great people to move things forward. So this space has been extremely rewarding for me, I would say overall. And there's never a dull moment. You mentioned the pandemic. I actually happened to be working at one of the world's largest banks during that time. And I can tell you that, I mean, we were called in and day out just to make
Yeah,
sure that we were not only protecting ourselves, but upstream and downstream dependencies,
yeah,
right? Just because we could move fast and do things, that doesn't mean it didn't mean that our suppliers up and down the chain could. And having those realizations, I feel that the CISO role has not stopped being that hero organization. CISO organization hasn't stopped being that hero organization since then, right? So we've been going full tilt ever since. And there's a lot of pressure on cybersecurity, as I mentioned, because it cuts across the entire organization. So marketing, cyber, legal is cyber, right? Everything is being touched by cybersecurity, whether upstream or downstream. So the role, I would say, it's probably one of the most focal roles in organizations because it truly
yeah.
has to cut across the entire.
I wish, Yonesy, that you tell me that this is the year where all of our security worries are going to be over, but I imagine there's probably a different reality. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing that is going to be kind of the defining factors of 2020.
Yeah, so I would say 2026 is going to be the year where we bring back parity. And what I mean by that is we're always in this symmetric sort of battle with attackers, right? Cyber attackers. Uh, when technology evolves, they're usually faster than attackers are faster than defenders, right? It's always easier to break something than it is to defend it. I believe this is the year where we are arming defenders with the same AI and agentic capabilities that the attackers have been using. If I kind of quote this somewhat correctly from the CrowdStrike cybersecurity report, about 81% of the breaches that they saw leveraged some type of access that was already there, and a ton of AI was leveraged by the attackers. So I believe we have to bring back now that parity from a defensive standpoint. And I believe this is the year that organizations, chief information security officers are leveraging agentic defenses
Mhm.
to bolster what their current teams and capabilities have. So I'm hopeful. I'm always a 3/4 full kind of guy. So I feel that this is the year that will bring back parity
I
to
like
the
that. Well,
defenders.
the force fights back, I guess. There you go.
That's right. That's right.
That's excellent. Well, listen, I mean, Yonesy, we've been talking about a lot of interesting stuff today. And certainly with with launching things like Surf AI and all these other endeavors that you're involved in, where's the best place to find you?
So I'm usually very vocal on LinkedIn. That I have a responsibility to folks in my space to really bring back some thought leadership and get the juices going and the conversations going. So I'm usually there. To learn more about surf.ai, you can just follow us on the internet at surf.ai. And I look forward to hopefully being back here with your invitation. Of course, Ben, all the best
Absolutely.
to you, your followers, and of course, the UNCAGED podcast.
Excellent. Well, Yonesy, thank you so much for being on the show today. I mean, we've been talking about the lovely world of global cybersecurity. I would say that this has probably been one of the areas that I have seen really continue to move as into the center of enterprise executive board level discussions. And Yonesy really was outlining, I'd say, today, some of the things that we're seeing out in that cybersecurity landscape. I'd say probably maybe, Jonas, this may be the most heartening conversation I've ever had with a CISO, where you're really kind of telling me maybe the good guys have a chance here. Maybe we can get some of this stuff resolved, and that's very, very exciting. But we'll keep a close eye on all of these new things that you and your colleagues are launching. And certainly we'll keep an eye on what you're writing about as we see this space continue to evolve.
Thank you. All the best.
Cheers.